Hi guys, I'm Antanis. I'm a team lead, development lead at SCI MarketView. I'm in IT for about almost 14 plus years. So I have an experience with development. I'm going to just share the challenges or things I'm seeing in the last 5 years around continuous delivery. So what are the challenges we're facing in the continuous delivery, the bottlenecks, and what are the findings we have. So I'm not coming from operations, but I do see the operations a lot. So I can able to share the pains or the things that the other guys feeling on the other side. Yeah, press the wrong button. So what is the goal? One of the goals of the DevOps is actually optimize the software delivery process.
Why don't you stand it? Yeah.
Okay, all right. So what do we mean by optimizing the delivery process? So for example, again, as Paul said, it's DevOps is a culture. So it's actually combined of product development, the executives in the business, everybody is part of the DevOps culture, because like when we do things automatic fashion, there should be a pretty good amount of trust need to be involved. Business owners need to trust that, hey, you know what? We can take some degree of risk. It's not, it's not going to break anything. That the trust is a very important key factor in automation. So part of automation is that one. So that's actually, when we start doing the automation, that's where we are going to see some optimization around this faster delivery. Like, we can do a check-in, and like probably in an hour, we can see the code, checked-in code in the production. It's a kind of a goal. Nice to have a goal, but that needed trust. Sorry, I think I pressed the wrong button. So this is one of the sample development process. There's a pretty good article around in the website. We do the code commit, we do the build, we run some acceptance tests. Maybe we do some performance tests. It doesn't have to be every day. Manual testing and production, right? So when we're doing all these things, actually increasing the confidence in the production readiness, right? That's why we are doing the test. So developer doing the coding, yes, build. So whenever the build is actually mean that something is built, there's no syntax or anything like that. Doesn't say anything else. But the accepted testing and the manual testing is actually the key to give somebody said, hey, you know what? Looks like we did something right. Right. So, okay. So this is what we did like around in 2014. Before we start the continuous delivery process. This is exactly what we did in here. So we have a requirement, a user story. As a group of people, we designed. We were doing the agile, kind of agile, like in 2014. It's not a real agile. It's a kind of agile. We designed the application as a team. Again, we have a pretty good amount of divisions right there. So we have an architect, we have a product, we have a developer, we have a QA, and we had our operation team. So like, 3 different departments. Jason knows that one. It's there. It's there. It still exists in some degree, but it's more closely.
In our corner, right off the body.
So we do have it, but anyway. So we do have that division. So we develop, write the code, deploy to the test environment, and the quality assurance people started the testing. So that's where we find that then we have find defects, and the defect management cycles comes into play. And then deploy to, once everything is good, and then we deploy to production, and the cycles goes on. So we're coming back to the defect management cycle. So there's a lot of defects come from many different reasons. Configuration is one of the big things we always faced. Not understanding the user requirement pretty good. That's one of the places we can improve, optimize the delivery. So and so on. And again, the amount of time is taken to testing is another big fact. Like when we do the manual testing, it might take days. Automation might be faster. Again, automation, there's a couple of different ways we can do it. Like if we use the Selenium or something to front end, it might take like half a day. If we optimize the testing with different concept, it might be even faster. So the changes, development process in 2019 is slightly different. We are still improving. We don't know if this is the right or more optimized way, but we're seeing a lot of things right here. So again, not a lot of change. So the development process started with we started the requirement of user stories in more like a high level one. Then we start creating the acceptance test cases. So that's actually going to tell us exactly what the user wants. What is my minimum category or minimum criteria for my application? So we define all these things before. Then we do the design of the application. Then create a test cases. So we're trying to do the TDD. So the reason is to simplify or speeding up the test cases. So that's why we started creating the test cases. Again, I'm a developer. I'm not going to lie. We really don't do the pure TDD. We don't write the test cases the very first time, all the time, but we're trying to do it. Right. Okay, code test cases and the application code. Yeah, so we code the test cases. Let's make sure it's go to red, and then we write the code for application. So then it's run the test cases. It's green. That means we are writing the code, a minimum amount of code for the test cases or the requirement. Deploy to the test environment. Pretty good, right? So automated test cases running, exploratory testing. So something is automation testing may not cover everything. So we'll probably need to do some kind of exploratory testing in the actual UI, like maybe a mobile app works differently, and website, color or alignment and all these things. It's pretty much faster to a human to test it, right? Very small amount. So we are looking around maybe 20 test cases, and exploratory testing maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So one quick, couple of quick happy that, right? Deployment to production is the last piece. So again, the cycle goes on and on. The thing is the delivery cycle is going to be small rather than okay. So the challenge, so that's the different thing. So what is the challenges we faced over the years, right? So one of the things is release schedule. So product come back and say, hey, you know what? We don't want to deploy today. We need to deploy in the next month, but we need to deploy something else right now, right? Based on the business priorities. So issues, so we can do a couple of things as Paul mentioned, feature toggle. So if we put every feature within the feature toggle, we can turn it on and turn it off in a minute in a configuration manager. Version control, and the small change. Small change means I can write a very small amount of code and check, put it into production. So that's the impact is going to be small as well. Issues with the code merge. Is it a good thing? How many of us like doing the code merge nowadays? Nobody? Right. No, right? All right. Again, we might have to do it, but it's very painful process to do the code merge, and that sometimes that's introduced different defects and so on. But continuous delivery with the feature toggle, we can completely avoid those code merge. So another challenge would be dependencies and external libraries. That's one of the that's one of the problem we have. People, trying to use that, NuGet packages in the config file. So one app might be running in one NuGet version, the other one working in a different one. When we put them together in the integration environment, things fail. That's one of the challenges we have. Schema changes. So schema changes is when we do the serialization and deserialization. Sometimes, my unit work, I pass a message to my second component, oops, it's failed. Because sometimes we really handle the schema changes properly. That's one of the challenges we faced. So So a couple of things we were thinking to solve it using API gateway, so we can actually able to direct the traffic based on the different version of the API. So that's something, it's not implemented yet, something we are trying to, we are thinking to do that one. We did a couple of experimenting on the site with our architect. API gateway and the containers might help to solve that type of problems. So we can have like 2 different versions of the API able to run it in the same thing. Gateway will be able to route the traffic. Okay, so another problem is like tests are too slow. That's one of the biggest problem. We had this problem in like very early days. One of the thing is like too many test cases. So we are testing things like unnecessarily a lot of test cases because we try to mimic all the manual testing aspect, build the test from the UI. End up having too many test cases because like we're not too comfortable with pushing things into prod in an automatic fashion. That's one of the thing. Repetitive testing is the same thing, like too many tests, repetitive, and too many UI tests. That's the biggest bottleneck we have. So what we did right now would be like, we tried to write a lot of unit tests, some workflow tests, and then a very few UI workflow tests. So only a few happy path and so on. For example, when we do the calculator or something like that, we put all the necessary things in the unit test, and we put only the very few workflows able to do the end-to-end type of workflows. So this is one of the thing actually help us a lot with understanding the proper testing strategy. 70% of the test cases should be in the unit test, and if the pyramid going like 70, like 10, 9, and so on. So the UI test should be like very small. We don't have to test like a lot of things in the UI. UI test is mostly around am I putting the values in the right spot? No business, we shouldn't have any business logic testing in the UI. The end-to-end flow test, the one layer below the UI. So that's the API testing. So if you are not able to do things, so if you are not able to do the workflow using the API, there is no point of testing that thing in the UI, because like UI is not going to work it, because UI should not be that smart. It should be just a display and calling the right API. So that's, so again, that's going to be a 4%. Most of the things would be under the unit test. So the other question is like, how do we trust the unit test? So one of the things we need to do is like unit test also tied up with not to the code coverage. So most of us like writing the unit test for code coverage, but it's rather than it should be tied up to requirements. So that's one of the things we are trying to do it right now. So every unit test actually tied up to a business requirement or business specification. So actually like at that point we can say that, hey, you know what? This particular scenario is covered somewhere or in the unit, somewhere in the unit. So it's able to, map it properly, right? So, yeah, right. So create unit tests based on the acceptance test cases. So as I mentioned before, like, we are start writing the acceptance test cases, and the acceptance test cases are actually meant to be for the unit. I mean, it's actually tied up to the unit test. Code coverage is good, which is actually able to tell us like what is covered. So do we have any kind of unnecessary lines or so on? But requirement coverage is more important than the code coverage. And the other thing is like write business-friendly test cases. Gherkin language is one of the really good tool, which is business can able to understand. Everybody in the team able to understand. Like I think like one of the getter check-ins. Getter check-in is one of the things we had very long time. Used to be the pipeline broke a lot of time, but it's not a lot nowadays. I think like we release the gate, we relax the gate slightly. So with somebody checking the bad code, pipeline it's blocked the entire checking things, because we didn't do like automatic rollback and things like that. That's one of the things. So it's as Paul said, it's a culture. DevOps is like a teamwork, it's a culture. If I did something wrong, make sure I act properly in a timely fashion, so somebody else is not going to block it.
So then you're not using Git.
No, we're not using it. That's the problem. Okay, so there's another challenge is like, misinterpret the business requirement. As I mentioned earlier, again, this has been covered by writing a proper acceptance test cases with the business. So sometimes, we used to have a quality assurance team writing the test cases. So we have a business analyst, developer, and a quality assurance team. I don't remember we did kind of a coordinated review before, but so there's a misinterpretation happen a lot. Like right now, we start writing the accepted test cases together. Like everything is actually figured it out like the early state. Even somebody start designing the app. That's a very common cause for defect. Proper ATDD or BDD methodology will reduce the confusions, right? I think I've already counted down the goal. So the goal of the ATDD is actually to help everyone understand the requirement properly. It's not about the coding, or it's not about things. It's actually understand the business properly, right? Communication is the key factor in continuous delivery. So the communication doesn't mean like it's only within the agile team. It's actually with like everybody. Like everybody needs to understand the business. Like if anything, like we shouldn't be more fear or anything about seeking for help or anything like that. It's owning that process. So there's a couple of things in here. Communication is the key, and we do have a couple of communication channels in place. Like email is probably a little bit too slow. Slack would be faster, in some degree. Again, I prefer verbal communication. Like I prefer to call somebody, hey, behind, like Jason. If Jason is close by, I'll probably say, hey, can you take a look at it? It's more faster. It's more instant response. But again, some people prefer email and other channels. But the thing is, like, as long as we communicate in a quick or fast manner, that's it. Right? It doesn't, There's a couple of things we have around, this is one of the cultural shift we are talking about. It's a three different types of styles of managing the thing. So the one, like, if you want to have, the third one is like, I want to focus on that one. So when we do the proper agile or proper DevOps or proper CI, we need to have a higher cooperation. We need that one. Messengers are trained, risks are shared. So there's no blaming game. Like, that's one of the biggest pieces. Like, hey, didn't work, it's you break it. It's not going to help. It's actually, demotivate that person who is actually introduced a small thing, right? So, but rather than that one, it's actually, hey, you know what, we broke it, it's different. It's give a completely different meaning than you broke it and we broke it, right? It's like a shared thing. So that's actually coming down, that's actually the bridging, right? Failures lead to inquiry, like why this failed, so how we can prevent, what we need to do differently next time, and all these things. Pretty much that's it. Those are the important pieces. Sorry?
Could you explain the second one? Messengers.
So this is something like, when somebody trying to introduce new things, or finding a new technology or anything like that, they will be probably encouraged and, letting everybody to, hey, you know what? Yeah, why not? Try it out. Try it out, it will work. Everybody help them to trying new things rather than finding, hey, you know what? Oh, it looks like this may not work for us. No. Or the other thing we usually get is like, oh, no, don't worry about it. This is working working perfectly for like 5 years. It's not going to break. Don't touch it. So it's actually putting everybody into like a one state rather than moving to the next state, right? one of the great example in our company is like we have one small application which is a command task queue monitor. It's running very good for a while, like 5-10 years. We are just started thinking to upgrade that one. Just like initially we always think that, hey, you know what, this is working good, why we need to change? But right now there's a point that that one is actually not able to perform pretty good, pretty fast, right? So, all right. So then, right, also there's a couple of challenges with the continuous delivery, bring up with the mobile app. So like, a lot of things tightly coupled, if we create a mobile app with a tightly coupled application or loosely coupled application, what I'm saying is like the mobile app and the API. What happen if it's like tightly coupled and what will happen if it's loosely coupled. So not every, I don't update my Facebook app for a while. So if the Facebook actually changed their API, if it's not compatible, then I'm actually forced to upgrade my Facebook, which may not be a good user experience, right? So loosely coupled application actually help us to solve that problem. So my app is like forward and backward compatible application. That's one of the thing. Other things, even if I'm actually forced to update my app, I really don't know when my app is going to be released in the App Store. Right? The app, like a day of delay in certifying the app, right? So that's one of the problem we have. So again, there's a couple of ways we can solve it. API versioning might solve that issue. Again, I might need to run like multiple version of the APIs in the server at the same time. So again, kind of with the rolling deployment. So, which is again the same thing, right? We should be able to run multiple version of the APIs at the same time. We can try to leverage that one. Pretty much that's it. Those are the major challenges we faced. There's a lot of things we are still learning. I believe even with the next in 2025 we'll be still learning about DevOps and how to do the continuous delivery in a good fashion. So it's a learning journey. Like it never stops. Pretty much that's it. Any questions so
far? Questions? You guys good? Look at a couple, I guess. One question for you. So your 319 development cycle now, the expanded testing focus amongst the part. How long is that taking for a cycle? For like, are you still agile, or are you?
All right. So this is one of the success story I just discussed with my manager, at 5:30. So we put complete a feature last night. In checking the code around like 5:30, so actually that one went to production around 9 in the night. So the release cycle actually was very small. So we started that particular feature like in the morning around like noon, and that particular feature is actually in the prod like 9. So the release cycle is like very small. It's about a day of release cycle. So it's application is completely tested and it's actually went to prod. It's not just like a config change or anything like that. So.
Any other questions?
Let's give a last round of applause for the speakers. Thank you.